I still remember the day the envelope arrived. I'd come home from another drudging day at the office, my shoes making a weary clack-clack on the wooden floor of my apartment's hallway. It sat conspicuously in the center of my doormat, the faded gold embellishments catching the light from the hallway's lone bulb. The paper felt like expensive parchment, a sharp contrast to the usual assortment of bills and advertisements I'd grown accustomed to. The sender? Anonymous. But the scent? Aged roses mixed with a hint of dust. Nostalgia's subtle perfume. Inside was a singular card, the same color as twilight. You are cordially invited to a once-in-a-lifetime experience, it began, followed by an address. At the bottom, in an intricate, handwritten script was, "Dress comfortably, remember, time is of the essence." As I read, a shiver crept up my spine, a premonition or just the evening chill. Either way, my monotonous life needed a touch of the unknown. But who would send this? My thoughts raced. There were no obvious signs, no postmark, no return address. Was this a joke, or had the intrigue of some forgotten memory tugged at my subconscious? With the era of social media and digital invites, such a handwritten piece was a pop culture relic. Like those stories of haunted eBay purchases or cursed images from the dark web, I contemplated the card's message over dinner. Time is of the essence. A phrase often hurt, but now felt imbued with deeper meaning. As the hours ticked by, curiosity gnawed at me. I made my decision I'd go. What did I have to lose? If it was a hoax, at least I'd have a story to tell. But deep down, the lure of the unknown pulled me in like a moth to a flame. Tomorrow, I would find out exactly what awaited me at this mysterious address. And with that thought, I set the stage for a night that would redefine my understanding of time. The old house loomed before me, its facade worn by time. As I pushed open the creaky front door, an eerie stillness greeted me. The chandeliers above cast a dim amber hue, revealing ornate tapestries depicting ambiguous shadowy figures against a backdrop of endless clocks. Each tick echoed as if time itself had slowed. To my left, a cluster of people stood, their murmured conversations blending into a low hum. I approached, giving a nod of acknowledgement. Their faces showed a similar blend of curiosity and apprehension. A man in his early 30s introduced himself as James. Beside him, a young woman named Lisa with an air of skepticism, a middle-aged gentleman named Robert with a camera draped around his neck, and Clara, a woman in her late 20s who appeared as intrigued as I was. James broke the ice. "Did everyone else get one of these too?" he asked, holding up an invitation identical to mine. Nods and murmurs of affirmation filled the room. Robert adjusted his glasses. Strange, isn't it, in the age of WhatsApp and Zoom invites? We're lured here by paper and ink. Lisa, with a smirk, added, "Perhaps it's a retro-themed party, and we missed the memo." Yet her jest couldn't mask the undercurrent of unease. As stories of the invites unfolded, parallels emerged. All of us had been stuck in some personal rut, yearning for something, anything, to break the monotony. This common thread wove a sense of camaraderie among us. But, with every tale shared, the room's atmosphere grew denser, as though the house itself listened intently. Clara, eyes sparkling with curiosity, voiced what all of us were likely thinking. "What do you reckon this is about? Some elite club's induction or an elaborate prank?" Before any of us could respond, the room's single door creaked open, revealing the entrance to a dimly lit basement. At the top stood an elderly woman, silhouetted against the soft glow. Her voice, wispy yet commanding, beckoned, "The game is about to begin. Please descend." The assembly of strangers hesitated, but a shared sense of adventure, or perhaps fate, nudged us forward. And so, with trepid steps, we descended into the heart of the mystery. The basement was expansive, its walls lined with worn-out books, dusty artifacts, and paintings so old the subjects were almost faded into obscurity. The air was thick, scented with the mingled odors of moss and ancient wood. In the middle of the room stood an old table, atop which lay 5 sealed envelopes. The elderly woman stepped into the light, revealing her face a canvas of age, with wrinkles etched deeply but gracefully. Her piercing blue eyes held an enigmatic glint. "Greetings, players," she began. "I am Mrs. Blackwood. Tonight, you are here to play the Four Corners." She paused, allowing the name to sink in, her gaze surveying each of us. With a gesture, she invited us to the table. "Inside these envelopes are your positions for the game," she explained. "There are 4 corners in this room, each marked with an emblem, the sun, the moon, the star, and the clock. The fifth position is the center, denoted by the hourglass. Each of us reached out, choosing an envelope. I hesitated for a moment before selecting mine, feeling its weight and wondering about the fate it held. As I broke the seal, the emblem of the hourglass gleamed back at me. I was to stand in the center. James would be the sun, Lisa the moon, Robert the star, and Clara the clock. Miss S. Blackwood explained the rules. When the lights go out and then return, only one among the corners will experience a shift. They aim, observe, deduce, and survive. The vagueness of the word shift raised more questions than answers, but Miss S. Blackwood offered no further clarification. The game seemed straightforward, almost too simple, yet an aura of unease lingered. As the players took their positions, James exclaimed, "This could be fun, a bit of old-fashioned mystery." Lisa rolled her eyes, though her smirk betrayed a mix of excitement and apprehension. Robert, ever the observer, was already studying the corners with his camera, while Clara stared intently at the emblem. I took a deep breath, finding my place in the center. From here, I could see the faces of my newfound acquaintances, each mask of anticipation reflecting my own. Miss S. Blackwood's voice rang out once more. "Remember, time is of the essence. Let the game begin." With that, the room plunged into darkness, and an adventure beyond our understanding commenced. Darkness enveloped us, so thick it felt as if it might swallow me whole. The stillness was punctuated only by our breaths, steady yet slightly quickened from anticipation. I counted the seconds in my head, the weight of the silence pressing upon me. Then, just as suddenly as they had extinguished, the lights flickered back to life. Instinctively, my gaze darted to each corner. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss. But as my eyes adjusted, I noticed a subtle change. Clara, standing at the clock emblem, looked different. Her face appeared slightly smoother, the tiny lines at the corners of her eyes softened. It was as if a year or two had been delicately erased from her visage. Robert, always ready with his camera, snapped a picture, his excitement palpable. "This is fascinating. Clara, did you have a quick spa session in the dark or something?" he teased. Clara, touching her face with a mix of surprise and amusement, laughed. "Well, I did ask for miracle cream on my last birthday. Maybe someone took it too literally." James winked. "Should have asked for that cream sooner, eh?" Lisa chimed in, playfully nudging Clara. "Now that's what I call a glow-up." The room echoed with light-hearted laughter at the initial tension dissipating for a moment. Despite the playful atmosphere, I couldn't shake a gnawing feeling. It was easy to dismiss the change as a trick of the light or perhaps even makeup, but my intuition whispered otherwise. As the participants exchanged playful banter, Miss S. Blackwood remained silent, her gaze fixed on Clara, her expression inscrutable. Seeing our relaxed demeanor, she finally spoke. "Do not be lulled into complacency by the game's gentle beginning. As with all things, the passage of time waits for none, and its effects can be both fleeting and eternal." Her words, though cryptic, served as a somber reminder that there was more at play than met the eye. Robert, ever the skeptic, shrugged it off. "Let's not get all gloomy. It's just a well-executed parlor trick, nothing more." But as the next round began, and the lights prepared to flicker once more, I couldn't help but wonder if this parlor trick held consequences we hadn't yet fathomed. Anticipation gripped the room once again. As the lights dimmed, I closed my eyes, bracing for whatever the game had in store next. The mysterious dance of time and light had only just begun. The dim light of the basement seemed to pulse with a life of its own, casting elongated shadows across the walls. As each round progressed, changes became more pronounced, drawing a line between disbelief and undeniable reality. After one particular blackout, James, previously sporting a full beard, now had just the faintest shudder of stubble, his face more youthful. Lisa, on the other hand, seemed to have aged a decade in mere seconds. Fine lines that weren't there before now creased her forehead, and her posture, previously lively, seemed weighed down by invisible burdens. Robert's photos became a testimony to these alterations. "Look," he exclaimed, showing a before and after shot of Lisa. The evidence was irrefutable, and his previously skeptical demeanor had evaporated. "This isn't normal. It isn't possible." Whispered conversations and theories buzzed around. Was this some avant-garde tech at play? A psychological experiment? Or something more arcane? We began sharing quick, searching glances, trying to figure out if we were all genuinely experiencing the same phenomenon or if this was just an elaborate deception. Clara, the first to change, appeared the most perturbed. Her voice, trembling with a mix of fear and determination, broke the murmurs. We need to find a way out. This isn't just some game, it's playing with our very essence. I, too, had started to sense the walls of the basement closing in on us. An experiment or not, it felt as if we were trapped in this temporal roulette. I discreetly tried the door we had entered from. It wouldn't budge. Panic, like a creeping shadow, began to claw at my insides. James, ever the optimist, tried to rally us. Let's keep our heads. There has to be a logical explanation for all of this. Maybe it's a hallucinogenic gas or some form of hypnotism. But his words seemed hollow, even to him, as he absent-mindedly tugged at a now non-existent beard. Robert, flipping through the captured images, mumbled more to himself than anyone else. Time. It's bending, stretching. But why, and to what end? Lisa, her eyes now glistening with tears, whispered, "We're like playthings, toys of time. I just want to go home." Amidst the despair and confusion, Mrs. Blackwood remained the sole beacon of calm. Observing our growing disarray, she finally spoke up. "You all chose to play to tempt the fates of time. The game has rules, and it's not over until it declares so." Her words sent chills down my spine. "What are you?" I found myself asking, my voice betraying a mix of awe and terror. Mrs. Blackwood simply smiled, a cryptic and enigmatic expression. "A keeper of time, a warden of moments. If you will, your fate is bound to this game until its conclusion." The realization hit hard. We weren't just playing a game. We were ensnared in it. And with every flicker of light, we danced on the precipice of our past and future, teetering between moments lost and moments yet to be. The only way out, it seemed, was to see the game through to its final, fateful round. The air in the basement grew colder, the weight of our situation pressing down on each of us. Clara was the first to voice what we all felt, her tone a blend of anger and fear. "This isn't just a game, we're prisoners." Fueled by a potent mix of dread and determination, James and I hurried to the door, pulling and pushing with all our might. But it remained stubbornly shut, as unyielding as a wall of stone. Lisa, desperation evident in her eyes, searched the room for any other possible exits, while Robert, ever the analytical one, examined the corners, perhaps hoping to find a clue or a way to reverse the game's effect. The eeriness of our confinement was compounded by Mrs. Blackwood's sudden disappearance. "Where is she?" Clara questioned, her voice rising an octave. "She can't just vanish into thin air." Accusations began to fly. Lisa, eyes flashing with suspicion, turned on James. "You were too calm when this all started. Were you in on this from the beginning?" James retorted, his own panic evident. "Me? Why would I trap myself in this nightmare?" Robert, trying to play peacemaker, intervened. Accusing each other won't help. We need to think, understand the rules. There has to be a way out. But his words barely registered as the tension continued to mount. Clara, her gaze darting around the room, whispered, "What if one of us is behind this? What if one of us is Mrs. Blackwood?" A stunned silence followed, her suggestion hanging in the air, dense and foreboding. I felt a chill run down my spine. The thought had crossed my mind too, albeit fleetingly. After all, who was Mrs. Blackwood? And how could she wield such power over time? Could she be one of us, masquerading in another form? Lisa, her voice shaking, pointed at me. "Alex, you've been too quiet. Is this your doing?" I could hardly believe my ears. Why on earth would I do this to myself? I'm just as trapped and scared as all of you. I defended, my heart racing. The room became a cacophony of blame and counter-blame. Trust, it seemed, was the first casualty of our confinement. Each of us, grappling with the surreal and unexplainable, sought a tangible culprit. Amidst the chaos, the lights flickered, drawing our attention back to the game. A new round was about to begin. But this time, the impending darkness felt more menacing, a mirror to the growing mistrust and despair in our hearts. We took our positions, the camaraderie from earlier rounds now replaced by a thick veil of suspicion. As the lights dimmed, the room plunged into an abyss, both literal and metaphorical. In that palpable darkness, I closed my eyes, silently praying for an end to the game and the return of our lost trust. As the lights reluctantly returned, gasps echoed around the room. James, who moments ago was a man in his prime, now stood awkwardly, his facial features softer, more youthful, a hint of acne marring his cheeks. His shirt hung loosely on his now slighter frame. Beside him, Lisa had transformed startlingly. Her vibrant auburn hair had turned snow white, her skin draped in a tapestry of wrinkles. James stared at his hands, as if expecting them to provide answers. I'm back in high school, he murmured, the deeper resonance of his voice replaced with a younger, more unsure tone. It was surreal, watching a teenager grapple with memories of an adulthood he had just been living. Lisa, leaning heavily on the table for support, looked down at her aged hands tracing the veins with a shaky finger. The realization of her transformation seemed to take a moment longer to register, but when it did, instead of fear, there was a far-off look in her eyes, one of longing and reflection. I haven't seen these hands in decades, she whispered. Clara approached James, her maternal instincts kicking in. It's going to be all right, she soothed. But James, his teenage self in turmoil, countered, all right, look at me, I've lost years, decades even. He looked around, seeking validation. Does anyone else not find this utterly insane? I approached Lisa, offering an arm for support. She accepted gratefully, her fingers frail yet firm. You know, there's a kind of serenity in age, she said softly. As terrifying as this is, seeing the world through older eyes again, it's not all bad. Robert, ever the pragmatist, posed the question we were all thinking. What triggers the age shift? Is it random, or is there a pattern? We all exchanged glances, each of us retracing the rounds in our minds, searching for a common thread. As Lisa reminisced about her youth and the love she once had, James struggled with the juxtaposition of an adult's memories in a teenager's body. He spoke of milestones he hadn't reached yet, a graduation he was now years away from, a job he had yet to apply for, and the myriad experiences that lay in between. Clara, deeply moved by their stories, said each age has its gifts, innocence, wisdom, energy, reflection. We need to embrace whatever this game throws at us and find a way to turn it to our advantage. The juxtaposition of James and Lisa became a poignant symbol of the passage of time. Challenges and gifts of both youth and old age were laid bare in front of us. It was a cruel reminder of the fleeting nature of life and the moments that define us. In the thick of our transformations, our personal struggles, and the mystery of the game, I felt a deeper connection forming between us all. We were on this journey together, and despite the horrors we face, there was also beauty in the shared experience. The game was changing us inside and out, and as another round loomed, we stood united in our determination to confront whatever came next. Holding on to moments of innocence and wisdom, terror and nostalgia, we braced ourselves for the game's unpredictable whims. The eerie atmosphere of the basement was momentarily overshadowed by our newfound determination. I could see it in every face, a blend of resolution and hope. Let's not let this game dictate our fate, Clara declared. Together, dividing the room, we each took a section, scouring for any hints, clues, or patterns. Robert focused on the table in the middle, meticulously examining every inch. Lisa, despite her frailty, was diligently searching the bookshelves, her fingers brushing over dusty spines. As we searched, we began sharing small fragments of our lives outside this forsaken game. James, his voice shaky with youthful uncertainty, spoke of his upcoming college admissions. I had plans to study art, he shared. Clara smiled gently at him, recounting tales of her own college days in the vibrant world of the 80s. Her stories were filled with passion and rebellion, a sharp contrast to the dire situation we found ourselves in. It was amidst the stories and searches that I stumbled upon an old ornate frame buried beneath a pile of musty, forgotten books. Wiping away the grime, an old black and white photograph revealed itself. A young woman, unmistakably Miss S. Blackwood, stood proudly, surrounded by individuals who bore an uncanny resemblance to us. It was impossible, yet there we were, forever captured in a time long before any of us remembered. Guys, you need to see this, I called out, my voice barely louder than a whisper. As they gathered around, I saw their faces mirror my disbelief. How is this even possible? The weight of the discovery pulled us closer, both physically and emotionally. Lisa, eyes glassy with tears, softly said, maybe we've been chosen for a reason. Maybe there's a deeper connection between us all, something that transcends time. Her words, though comforting, added another layer to the already complex puzzle we were ensnared in. Our brief moment of unity was interrupted by the soft hum of the lights above, a cruel reminder that another round awaited us. We stood in a tight circle, hands joined, the photograph serving as both a beacon of hope and a symbol of the mysteries we were yet to unravel. The atmosphere was thick with a blend of dread and camaraderie. We had come to depend on each other in a short span, finding solace in shared stories and experiences. And as we took our positions for the next round, the photograph of Mrs. Blackwood and our doppelgangers lingered in our minds, hinting at connections beyond comprehension. The oppressive hum of the lights intensified. It felt as if the basement itself was anticipating what would come next. As they dimmed and then fled back to life, the transformation was immediately evident, striking us all with a mix of horror and heartbreak. Where Robert stood, there was now a child of no more than 4, tears streaming down his face, his oversized clothes pulling at his feet. "Mama," he sobbed, looking around with wide. His plaintive cries echoed in the thick air, each one a knife to our hearts. The juxtaposition of seeing a grown man's clothes on such a small, vulnerable child was disorienting. Darhor, on the opposite corner, Lisa's transformation was even more shocking. Her previously aged body had progressed further down the path of time, now frail to the point of fragility. Her breath came in short, raspy gasps, and her once vibrant eyes were clouded over, the spark of life in them dwindling. Panic set in, its claws sinking deep into our collective psyche. Clara rushed to the child, trying to offer comfort, her voice shaking. "It's okay, little one. We're here," she whispered, even though her own eyes betrayed her deep-seated fear. Meanwhile, I tried to support Lisa, her skeletal frame trembling with the effort of staying upright. James, his adolescent voice breaking, shouted, "We need to end this now." But the question remained, how? The game seemed to be playing us more than we were playing it, and with each turn the stakes were escalating at an alarming rate. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in on us. The weight of our predicament, the weight of the choices we've made, pressed heavily upon our shoulders. With each transformation, it wasn't just the physical changes that tormented us, it was the loss of experiences, memories, entire lifetimes. Huddled together, we were a tableau of the human condition in all its stages, the innocence of childhood, the recklessness of youth, the wisdom and fragility of old age. Bound by circumstance and fate, our once diverse lives had converged in this twisted game, our stories intertwining in ways we could never have imagined. And as the lights threatened to dim again, our resolve hardened. We wouldn't let the game win. But the path to victory, or even mere survival, remained shrouded in mystery. Holding the photograph close, I couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to it than met the eye. The image of Mrs. Blackwood surrounded by our doppelgangers held a secret. I could feel it. Running my fingers along the ornate frame, I felt an unusual indentation on the back. Pushing on it, a small compartment slid open, revealing a tightly folded note. Unfolding it with trembling hands, the paper was aged, its edges frayed. The key lies in understanding time, not escaping it. It read in delicate, cursive handwriting. I shared its contents with the group, and we mulled over its meaning. How does one understand time, especially in the confines of this ever-changing and manipulative game? Clara, her gaze distant, mused aloud. Maybe it's not about running from what's happening, but rather facing it head-on. Her words carried weight, and a daring plan began to form. If time was the essence of this game, then we had to play with time itself. It was a risky proposition, but given the dire situation, any shot at salvation was worth a try. "Let's reverse the positions," James suggested, his voice edged with hope and uncertainty. The youngest, Robert, now the little child, should take the furthest corner, followed by James himself, then Clara, and finally me. The center spot, typically the pivot of the game's twists, would be occupied by Lisa, who was teetering on the very precipice of life and death. By placing the oldest in the center, we hoped to symbolize the full circle of life, challenging the very nature of the game. With bated breath and a silent prayer, we assumed our positions. As the lights dimmed and then surged back with a blinding intensity, we braced ourselves for the outcome of our audacious gamble. When the brightness receded, our surroundings had changed. No longer were we trapped in the oppressive basement. Instead, we stood in what appeared to be the main hall of the house, sunlight streaming in through ornate windows. A collective sigh of relief washed over us as we realized our gamble had paid off. Robert, back to his adult self, looked around with wonder, his recent memories as a scared child still fresh in his mind. Lisa, rejuvenated, took a deep, life-filled breath, her eyes reflecting gratitude and amazement. Our triumphant moment was interrupted by the soft clapping of hands. Turning around, we were met by the enigmatic presence of Mrs. Blackwood. "Congratulations," she began, her voice a mix of admiration and melancholy. "Few have ever managed to outsmart the game, but you," she gestured towards the photograph still clutched in my hand, "understood the essence." As we stood there, awaiting an explanation, she simply said, "There are some games that are meant to teach, not torment. I too was once a player, and not all my companions were as fortunate." The sorrow in her eyes was palpable, hinting at a tragic past. Without further words, she gestured towards the open front door, signaling our freedom. Stepping out into the sunlit world, I felt the weight of the day's events pressing down on me. The game, with all its horrors and revelations, had offered a profound lesson about the fragility and beauty of time. With every tick of the clock, life unfolds, moments slip away, and all we truly have is the present. The house, with its dark secrets, faded into the background, but its lessons would stay with me forever. I had entered seeking thrill and left with a deep reverence for the passage of time, knowing it was both a gift and a challenge. Weeks had passed since the harrowing events of that evening, but not a day went by that I didn't think of the old house, Mrs. Blackwood, and the lesson of the game. Life resumed its usual pace, but with an undercurrent of mindfulness. Every moment seemed a little more precious, every interaction a little more profound. One afternoon, as I was sifting through my mail, a peculiar postcard caught my eye. It was not the glossy type with picturesque landscapes or sun-soaked beaches. Instead, it bore the sepia tone of a vintage photograph. Drawing it closer, I felt a familiar unease. It was Mrs. Blackwood, unmistakably younger, radiant in the prime of her life. But what truly arrested my attention was the scene it depicted. Mrs. Blackwood stood in the centre, surrounded by 4 participants. Each one was unmistakably aged, their faces lined with the deep crevices of time. They looked weary, burdened, and trapped, in stark contrast to her youthful glow. The image was haunting, hinting at the cyclical nature of the game. Had Mrs. Blackwood once stood in the centre, just as I had? Had she watched as her companions aged around her, powerless to alter the course of the game? The image raised more questions than it answered, but it served as a chilling reminder of the fleeting nature of time. Flipping the postcard over, a neatly handwritten message awaited. "Cherish every moment," it read. The simplicity of the words was profound, echoing the lessons I gleaned from the game. There was no signature, no hint of the sender, but the identity was unmistakably clear. I placed the postcard on my mantle, a daily reminder of the adventure, the mystery, and the lesson. Time, in its relentless march, leaves footprints on us all. But within its confines, we find our most treasured moments, memories, and experiences. It's up to us to cherish them, to savor the journey, and to remember that the true game of life lies in how we choose to spend each ticking second.